Has the fate of Hong Kong been decided? I do not think so. If we feel pessimistic and hopeless about the fate of Hong Kong 30 years later, it is only a lack of imagination. Even if it does not change for 50 years, Hong Kong's status quo can only be maintained until 2047. The 30-year period is not long, so Hong Kong people are worried. At present, the anxious people are basically divided into three directions to move forward. A. Strive for improvement within the framework of the basic laws explained by Beijing. B. To establish a democratic firewall between Beijing and Hong Kong through constant struggle to solidify the basic law system under the sacred principle of Hong Kong people governing Hong Kong. And C. Hong Kong independence. The third direction, Hong Kong independence, deserves to be said more. Many people think that it is just a young man's little play, not enough to accomplish something, and therefore not paid enough attention to it. This is definitely the wrong view, for two reasons as follow. 1. If it is not enough to impact something, why did the politic killer in Beijing, with the reason of non-compliance with the swearing-in ceremony, pull out two young lawmakers elected by one person and one vote? 2. What Beijing really fears is not the strength of the Declaration of Independence, but its strength of failure. China itself is in a troubled state, and before the 20th National Congress in 2022, Xi Jinping must make a political reform, or face the situation of the end of party or state and could be overthrown. All as mentioned by Wen Jiabao, Hu Jintao and Xi Jinping. Before the big moves of the 20th National Congress, Hong Kong independence and Taiwan independence were all same major events. They are enough to defeat Xi Jinping. Let's stretch the time and spread out the history as a long scroll. Does Hong Kong really have only the three directions mentioned above? Looking back at Chinese history, and looking at the world environment, let the imagination fly for a while. Is there no fourth way out for Hong Kong? A fourth direction is proposed here: one country, multiple HKS. That is to say, Hong Kong people themselves regard Hong Kong as an autonomous state, not the present special administrative region. And Hong Kong's basic law and indirect electoral system will be perfected by democratic principles, which makes the model of Hong Kong's autonomy can become a significant option under the Chinese people's democratization requirements, and then image map to the provinces of China, providing the possibility of a system reform for the whole of China, giving the No Way Out Communist Party a more self-redemption way out, which embodies the essence of the word republic in the PRC national title. In my article, 3 Types of China in 30 Years Later, I mentioned a point of view. Due to the Communist Party, it overused the nationalism and could not accept the experience from Russia, the West, Japan, Taiwan and Singapore to become as the next China model. China urgently needs to refine the model of institutional reform from endogenous experience. While Hong Kong experience is an endogenous experience currently still accepted by the CCP, that opportunity was fleeting. In another 10 years, perhaps the CCP based on no face may not be able to promote the Hong Kong model anymore. It will be a catastrophe for China. It is said in the article, is there any endogenous experience in China that can be used to deal with the eternal problem? I think yes, that is the Hong Kong experience. There are a number of people in the world, including scholars and politicians, who believe that China can solve the problems only by splitting itself into several pieces. However, based on my personal observation, the inertia of dynasty reunification in China for thousands of years has its geographical factors. I believe that qualified historical geographers, if they study and compare the geographical characteristics of Europe, China and the United States in detail, should be able to confirm my personal experience. Anyway, as previously mentioned, if China continues to concentre its authority, and one single whip governing approach, it will have no future for China. At present, in fact, China has a unique opportunity enough to find a balance between the two extremes of dynasty reunification and necessarily separation. That is to end the historical curse of the thousands of years, such as must be separated after long-term unification. must be reunified after long-term separation. After the article was published, a question has been raised by Chinese readers, and I believe that the question is very reasonable, so I quote the following for reference. The reader is rational to ask, you say the second type, one country and multiple HKS to make federalism. The question is, why federalism? The federalism in the hearts of the people of the mainland there is no market. The other countries in the world to do federalism is because there is no way to integrate, so the final compromise to make a federalism. For this reasonable question, I have made the following response. Thank you for the discussion. What you said is very reasonable. This article defaults to the situation as stronger than people, whatever internal and external. China's history has been up and down. Before 1949, the joint provincial autonomy, or area autonomy, was one of the possible paths. From 1949 to now, China's unification was implemented under the condition of one-party dictatorship. Unless we assume that one-party dictatorship can last another 30, 50, 100 and 500 years, otherwise, could the current so-called unified polity continue be sustainable? China has never experienced reunification under democratic or quasi-democratic conditions for the past 3,000 years. Therefore, if one-day democracy or partial democratization, for example, the need to open up the ban and freedom of speech in some circumstances, what kind of system can maintain the unification? This is a question that must be concerned by those who cares about China. Whether it is based on emotions or benefits. The CCP authorities like to use the 1.4 billion people as a shield, but in fact, the next step in China development at this moment is not determined by the idea of 1.4 billion people. This is not to say that China's direction has nothing to do with the people's ideas, but to point out a reality. China has been locked in the one-party dictatorship structure, and that any people's ideas or political ideals should be based on a viable alternative to the one-party dictatorship. Opponents of one-party dictatorships, if they think of revolution overthrowing the Communist Party, then there is nothing to discuss in this plan, because the revolution is not an alternative plan, but the rebuild from scratch. In the past 100 years, China has experimented with revolutions, and has experimented with unification under one-party dictatorship, both of which have proved to be politically unsuccessful, and have not been able to get rid of the aforementioned historical curse of must be separated after long-term unification, must be reunified after long-term separation. The only one that has not been fully tested in China, but has been partially tested in recent 100 years, is some form of federal autonomy system, such as the Southeast self-insurance movement at the end of the Qing dynasty, and the remarkable local self-government in Fujian province by Chen Jianming in the early Republic of China. From the perspective of larger history, the experience of Hong Kong today, if we continue to promote it to the mainland China, starts from Shenzhen, Guangdong, and Fujian, and then gradually deepening. Although this is only a current fantasy, it is not guaranteed that one day will not become the only one option. No matter how people evaluate Deng Xiaoping, his guts to innovate in the system, no one in the CCP can match up until now. At the innovation of first time, he put forward the idea of letting some people and some regions get rich first. If it had not been for his insistence, the CCP would have perished and China might have been in turmoil until now. His second innovation, although it has already been mooted in the CCP before, is the concept of one country, two systems, that Hong Kong people once accepted but do not like to hear today. The historian of the CCP can examine whether the one country, two systems concept from Deng Xiaoping and his advisors had inherent wisdom in paving the way for the one country, multiple HKS in the future. Just as Deng Xiaoping positioned Shenzhen as a special economic zone after his southern tour in 1991, and then launched a strategy of special economic zones throughout the country, he revived the China's economy, which was in the dead state of no any change. And he also set up the pile of the Hong Kong Special Administrative Region in 1997. Is it not for the sake of reviving China's politics in the future? Today, Xi Jinping, you can not just sit and enjoy the economic pile of Deng Xiaoping and forget the political pile he laid. Deng Xiaoping's legacy of walking based on two legs is a warning phrase he learned from Mao Zedong's painful lesson of power chaos and foresaw the CCP's dilemma. To invigorate the economy without invigorating politics is tantamount to walk on one leg. Chinese politics is bound to be corrupt in power and money, and the people are bound to fail to see the day when civilization regenerates. The next political challenge facing the CCP is no less than the economic challenge before Deng Xiaoping opened up the economy. We can even say that after more than 30 years of open economy, China's remaining economic momentum has entered a death intersection with the inertia of its rigid political system. At this juncture, only if it has the boldness to make subversive institutional innovations, then China has the opportunity to continue its development. The pile of one country, multiple HKS, have already been set up, and all its need is the courage to duplicate them. Hong Kong people should not underestimate themselves, thinking that Hong Kong has fallen into the fate of only dog wags its tail. Actually, Hong Kong's institutional advantages, the strength of the rule of law and the quality of its citizens, all can be summed up and combined into the tail wags the dog. Instead of waiting for their fate to be decided, why does Hong Kong not take one country, multiple HKS as its political bottom line, and take 10 to 30 years to regain its destiny and world position? Hong Kong's lawyers, organizations, and court system can be said the most advanced in Asia. As long as this group is not cowardly, coupled with people of insight in mainland China, and the main situation of the end of party or state if the Communist Party does not reform the system, who can say this is not a possible way out? Hong Kong, though so small, is also calling for a great statesman. However, for Hong Kong and Beijing, this historic opportunity comes at only one time, the 20th National Congress of CCP in 2022. Once passed after these two villages, there will be no any store ahead. Beijing and Hong Kong, you have to think about it.